Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. Oh, we've got to do a song first. We have to do a song. Court of the Wenton King.
Riding really fast.
Court of the Wenton King. Court of the Wenton King. Court of the Wenton King.
Viewing music and things.
Fireball. Yes, so hello and welcome. Fireball. We're doing Fireball today. The cover, is the cover funny? I think the cover's hilarious. It's just ridiculous.
Is it supposed to look like that?
Yeah.
It is.
I don't think it's supposed to, or maybe it is supposed to be funny. I don't know. I think that starting with putting their faces on the cover, I think is a mistake, and that's where it just gets silly. And it's just silly. Apparently, it was inspired by something else or something. Anyway, yes. If you check elsewhere, we've also got a review of Long Beat 71 I've just reviewed, because strangely this actually arrived this week. I think it came out last month, but it arrived for me this week, just when we were reviewing Fireball. It is just a coincidence, strangely. I think this is fantastic, because I think 71 in many ways is their live peak, the peak of the band. But what also is interesting is how there are no songs from Fireball on it, even though it's from 71. That's interesting. That is interesting. Last week I talked too much, but one of the things I did mention, or sort of mention, was about that sort of intensity of the playing. Everything's really intense, and that's what they did live. And it's not just about playing heavy or anything like that, it's about spontaneity. They don't just improvise. It's about playing right on the edge of, letting things almost completely fall apart by not thinking about it until you just do it. And that sounds like rhetoric, in that people will say that about, I don't know, some bands, and it's usually nonsense, but it really is like that. So it can all go wrong. Sometimes it did always go wrong, but that intense playing on the edge like that, it's kind of anti-intellectual in a way, in that they don't really think about it. They just play now, go, became their live thing. That's their live thing, and it's like what in rock is like. But the rest of their albums aren't like that at all. There aren't any of the Purple albums like that, not studio albums. They didn't do that. And this is where they tried something different. And that's good. It's good to try something different. And they ended up with like a spacey production. It's like this. There's lots of effects on there, and a backwards piano is on there, and there's lots of reverby stuff going on. And I assume that's what inspired the cover, because it's kind of spacey, but mixed with this kind of dirty riff funkiness that comes from Gillan, I think, which makes it different. It's not loved as much as Machine Head in rock. I get the impression there's like kind of a reappraisal by fans, so it's kind of the fans' album. Ian Gillan is the only one who says it's his favourite Deep Purple album, interestingly. And it is very Gillan-y, I think. Do you think it's Gillan-y?
It's pretty Gillan-y. I really like this album. I like the anti-intellectual thing you just said, because I get the impression from Deep Purple they're almost sort of like a backlash against the auteurs of music.
Yeah.
You get these people who are, you get very strange comments and wanting to do very strange things and intellectualise what is actually a very guttural form of expression.
Yeah.
And Deep Purple don't do that at all, really. It is literally all about playing good music well, recorded well, and not much more than that, really.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah,
and playing it coolly with cool tone and etc. etc.
Yeah, I mean, I get my feeling of the type of listening you do with Deep Purple. It's perfectly acceptable to have Deep Purple on in the background while you're in the car with your mates, having a laugh and that sort of thing, and listening to it as you're doing other things. Whereas there's a lot of bands from around that time, King Crimson. Not so much Led Zeppelin, but there is a little bit of that with Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin, where he.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a cultural thing. And there's also using Eastern modes and stuff like that.
Where it feels kind of wrong to actually listen to the music in that social context, where the best format you should be listening to it in headphones and trying to really absorb it all.
Mm.
There's no pressure from Deep Purple to do that at all.
Yeah,
and that's a refreshing thing.
Yeah. In that sense, it's a different thing for us to review.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think this came about because where do they go next? And this is bands have the difficult second album or the difficult third album. So this is kind of like their Led Zeppelin 3, except it's their difficult fifth album actually. Sixth. It's their difficult sixth album. The difficult sixth album where they had to do something different. Well, first time they've really properly made it. And they went into a studio, they came out with Anyone's Daughter, and then had to go back on tour again. So they went down into the country, man, and went to a house in Devon, and went to the pub a lot. You get the classic rock stories about, kind of like with Sabbath, with them having seances and axes and various things, which you can read about if you want to read about. So then they went on tour again, and then they had to go back into other studios to try and finish it, and the record company were getting very impatient. Blackmore was almost dismissive of it as soon as it came out, and on the first date of the tour, on the bus down to the first show with the journalist asked him, how do you write a song? And he says, like this. So Richie Blackmore plays a riff, and Ian Gillan improvises Highway Star. So immediately they're going on to the next album, which is, at the time, would seem to make sense because it just didn't sell as much. Now, it's almost the peak. So and all these songs worked fantastically live, and they were dropped. The odd song appeared here and there, and then disappeared, which is such a shame. They originally released it in the US first, with the third song being "Strange Kind of Woman." I don't know if the US release of this, the 25th anniversary version, still has "Strange Kind of Woman" as the third track, but that was the single, obviously. And then they promised the UK people that when it comes out in the UK, it's going to have an extended version of "Strange Kind of Woman." I assume it with the call and response singy stuff and the guitar from the live version on there, which didn't happen because then they subsequently wrote "Demon's Eye." So once again, the single isn't on the album. It is now, obviously, but it wasn't then. So that's interesting. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, let's review some tracks.
Track number 1, please.
Fireball.
Fireball! When you read about this, I mean, they say this about speaking as well. This is where speed metal was invented. You think this too, you think no, it isn't. The speaking isn't. Especially speaking, because you see where Deep Purple are coming from. It's rock and roll, really. It's not metal. But actually, Fireball, the drumming of Fireball, the double bass drum thing, genuinely is massively influential on thrash and all of that kind of stuff, actually. So, that's cool. And that's irrelevant now in a way, because that makes it sound old. It's just a great song. Really good song. Really weird middle eight and a bass solo.
Yeah, it's a typical opener. The drumming at the start's really good, actually. It's nice to hear some drums open an album.
Yeah. The sound of the air conditioning being turned on as well is that.
Yeah, this sounds more. Immediately you get the sense of it's more frantic than intense, like the last album. Yes, you think flipping out, we're in for another good ride here.
Right, well, something we didn't talk about last week was we didn't really talk about John Lord. We didn't talk about John Lord's organ. We have to do that joke, don't we? I mean, the organ. It's not keyboard. It's organ. Is the equal of the guitar. And I think probably more so on Fireball, in that the organ is out more on Fireball because they've stopped and thought about it in the way that in certain places they've let the music breathe more, which is interesting, and they kind of didn't really do that again. Track 2?
No.
I really like this. There's a live version. I mean, actually, generally Deep Purple stuff is better live, but there aren't many live versions of these things. But there's a live version on Beat Club for No No No, which I think is far better, which is a really good version of No No No. But it is a great dirty riff, very Gillan-y, that Into the Fire thing that they've kind of developed it. It's a bit more subtle. There's some really nice thick toned guitar, very typical Blackmore on this track.
And some lovely organ as well.
Yep.
It's quite a slow organ solo, which takes quite a little bit of confidence actually. I mean, solos are traditionally quite fast things, know.
It's your turn, go.
Massive acrobatics. Ooh.
Yeah.
But it sounds really, really good, and it just sort of underlines what a good performer and writer John Lord was.
Yes, and wasn't recognised at the time. I mean, on Live in London in '74. By then, as he's announcing the band, he says, "And my name is Rick Emerson," because obviously all the press have gone to Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson, but in so many ways John Lord is so much more tasteful and fantastic organ solos.
That's what I was going to say. There's something about Deep Purple. I have very good taste. Someone in Deep Purple has very good taste, and I suspect it's actually both Richie Blackmore and
John Lord.
John Lord.
It's those two. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
very good track. Track 3.
Yeah.
Demon's Eye.
Demon's Eye. So yeah, this was the one that was written after Strange Kind of Woman, so it wasn't on the American release. Another Gillan-y dirty riff kind of thing. This is interesting because this is Yngwie Malmsteen was bought this for his like 9th birthday or something like that. His sister bought it him, and supposedly it was the Demon's Eye solo. He had to play the Demon's Eye solo and learn to play the Demon's Eye solo exactly the same as on the album, supposedly, and that was his thing. That was where he started from. And you know, the story goes that eventually he ended up learning the whole of Made in Japan. So what? But I mean, learning the whole of Made in Japan exactly the same with all the mistakes. And then because the stereo wasn't very good, he could block out one half of the stereo, take the guitar out, play his own guitar onto it, play it to people, and say, "Listen to this." And they say, "Yes, Made in Japan. What are you talking about?" And he says, "No, listen. No, it is Made in Japan. No, that's me playing the guitar." And he could play exactly the same, which is amazing. It seems weird. It comes from Demon's Eye. You'd never guess Demon's Eye. Why Demon's Eye? Yeah. But it is a great guitar solo, but not a Malmsteen type thing.
Yeah.
You know, this business, this. All that business, you know. All the funky bends and the thick tone. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's quite. Again, the pace is a little bit slower. I almost wondered if this was a sort of influenced by Black Sabbath a little bit.
Yeah, the dirginess.
Yeah. And it got me thinking of the difference between Ian Gillan and Ozzy Osbourne. And Ian Gillan's got a great voice, yeah, but it's sort of when you start to contrast it with Ozzy in that setting, there's something he can't. I don't know. He can't hammer home the point. I don't know if it's. The vocals are a lot lower in the mix with Deep Purple.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably also technique as well. In that Ozzy's got just that clear, melodic sound to his voice.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd say that. Ozzy's got this clear, melodic sound to his voice.
We spent about 4 videos bigging up Ozzy Osbourne.
But it's true. Yeah. Whereas Gillan is dirty, shouty rock and roll vocalist, so it's.
Yeah, I think Gillan is what Ozzy Osbourne probably wanted to be.
Yeah, and I think it's what the rest of the band wanted him to be as well.
Yeah.
But they were wrong.
Yeah. Okay, next track.
Anyone's Daughter. This is the controversial one. Gillan at the time said that was a mistake, which is interesting because he subsequently said this is his favourite album. I don't think it's a mistake at all. I think it's you know, if there's a criticism to level it in rock, which you think you said last week, is that it's all the same. You know, whereas it's just something in the middle. It's an album track. It's a folk song. It's not that kind of folk song. It doesn't sound like Jethro Tull, ironically, given what's gone on later on. But it's a country kind of silly story song, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. My impression is a bit like a shoe chef making pickled onions. It just something doesn't sit right, but you know, there's enough technique there.
Yeah, they're just
to make it really good. I mean, my criticism of it is it should be about 2.5 minutes long.
Yeah,
and it's
or it should be a B-side.
Yeah.
It's messing around, really, isn't it? Yeah.
It's messing around, and it should be there to set up the next song. And because it's a bit long, I think it kind of undermines the following track a little bit.
Yeah.
It's great when you first hear it, though. It's all, oh man, this is.
Yeah, because you don't expect it. Yeah. Next song.
The Mule.
The Mule. Strangely, well, not really strangely. This became the drum solo, and consequently, it was the longest surviving song out of all these songs in the set. It was the only one to really survive any length of time. Really nice riff. Which on the one hand is so obvious, but really nice. It's got that spaciness to it, which is kind of very unpurple, and obviously you've got the repeating drum pattern, Tomorrow Never Knows style kind of stuff, which is really nice. It's not completely instrumental. There's a short vocal bit on it, and this is where they're letting the music play. They're letting the songs breathe in a way you wouldn't expect Purple to do that. You know, there's time when there's guitar going on, but it's not a guitar solo. You know, the music's just playing and they're playing along, and then there is actually a guitar solo, but then there's some more playing and some more keyboards, and you know, and that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I thought in isolation it's actually a better song than it appears than it feels when you listen to the album, because of Anyone's Daughter is so long. Anyone's Daughter should be like the sorbet between the chorus.
Yeah,
it should sort of clean the palate, ready for the Mule. And if it did that, I think this would come across a little bit better. It is a really, really good track. just suffering a little bit from its position, I think. I mean, it is sort of like the counterpoint, isn't it, of Anyone's Daughter? It's sort of
yeah, it is.
opposite.
Yeah. It fits nicely into the next song as well, I think.
Yeah, which is Fools.
Fools! Sounds like a Dio song. You're all fools! Listen to Fools. This is should be the centrepiece of the album, and is. I think it's obviously a real classic. This is the extended piece. Nothing like Child in Time. This is a different thing. You know, a heavy riff and a long jam in the middle, and which came out of the Mandrake Root jam actually when he's using his volume control. Can't do that on an acoustic guitar. There isn't a volume control, and it was not played live at all until I think 98 or 99, maybe 2000. Interestingly, they added some other bits to it as well when they brought it in live. They added some little arpeggio-y bits, which is interesting because without that, it's very, very simple. Another, interesting, unique piece of music that is part of the Purple thing.
Yeah, I mean, it starts off sounding a bit like Deep Purple does the Doors.
Yeah.
And then sort of evolves into Deep Purple does Deep Purple. And then you've got sort of a John Lord. It sounds like John Lord's sort of classical sort of influences.
Oh, it is, yeah, it's another neoclassical bit, isn't it? I mean, there's other bits of that.
No, which is really nice. It's actually good. I mean, this is probably the track that comes closest to running against my renegades of auteurs sort of theory of Deep Purple, because it is quite creative and sort of you can imagine people like us getting quite excited over it.
But I mean, if I made a Deep Purple compilation, I would try very hard to fit that on it.
Yeah, it's good. It is interesting. It is genuinely interesting piece of music.
Weird lyrics. Interesting lyrics about it's about someone who's died and he's looking down on the earth and looking at the thing. You're all fools. What are you doing? Which is another reference to the cover, obviously, but the spaciness of it, as well. People actually thought the guitar solo in the middle was actually a cello, because Blackmore did have a cello later on and had lessons from the guy from ELO. But it's not obviously a guitar.
Your last track on the album?
No One Came. Very, very Gillan-y, this one. It's almost like a Gillan rap. Love that. I'm more interested in the playing than the vocal stuff. I like the vocal stuff, and it's nice for them to be doing something a bit different, and etc. etc. But it's very funky, ironically, given what went on later on. I can't see Blackmore liking this at all. I'm amazed he even played on it, but I like it. There's some great playing on there. Some great. Interesting. The organ is quite withdrawn compared to the rest of the album. It's more like John Lord 20 years down the line, in that he's not pushing it as much as he used to.
Yeah, maybe that explains why I'm not crazy about this one. It felt, maybe because the guitar is slightly higher in it, or it feels like they're Deep Purpling again.
They are Deep Purpling again.
Yeah. Which, it's alright. But I think this, up until that point, it has been a remarkably consistently refreshing album.
That's true.
As opposed to In Rock, which it started sort of grating a bit towards the end on me.
It all sounds like Deep Purple, yeah. Whereas this is the next album and they're trying different things. It's what we would expect them to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So obviously this is the start of the journey. Obviously, what would they do next? That's the question. 5 eggs for me. Yeah, 5 eggs.
5 eggs for me as well.
Great album.
Yeah.
Viable. It's one of those ones where it's kind of the forgotten classic because it's overwhelmed by the other 2 albums that sold more.
Yeah.
Viable
stuff.
See you next time.
Bye bye.